Hi, April.
Hey, Emily. Well, I have tried to find the quietest place in my house, but it seems like this is a very popular day for yard work
Okay.
um, for my neighbors. So
Uh-huh.
I'm hoping that doesn't come through very well on on the listener's end when we start recording.
Right.
Well, before we get started recording and I push record, was there anything that you had questions about or uh, I can't think of anything, but just
No, I think we're just talking, aren't we?
we are exactly.
Yeah, I listened to E.A. Williams last week, and sounds like you have a good way of interviewing and making the person feel comfortable, and so I feel like I'm just kind of winging it, but I'm ready to wing it with you. So,
I, I love that. I love that. You're my wingman here, or
okay,
I'm yours. One of these.
okay, all right.
Either way. It's Sheffy's Sandbox. Today's guest is Emilie Collins. She's a former speech pathologist and audiologist, current artist and facilitator of SoulCollage and Holotropic Breathwork. Welcome, Emilie.
Thank you. Good to be here, April.
Well, in this segment, we pop into a virtual coffee house before hitting the beach. And being the benevolent host that I am, your order is on me. So, what order do you give the barista?
I don't know. What are my choices?
I see how you think. Okay, this virtual coffee house
Uh-huh.
serves anything, including non-coffees. So, like when you're just chillaxing, what's your beverage of choice? Are
Um,
you an iced tea person
I was wanting iced coffee this morning
with
because
an extra shot of anything?
no, just good strong iced coffee with a little bit of real whipping cream in it.
And from what I remember, you are not terribly close to any coffee house, are you?
No, I mean we
Yeah, I
have
didn't think so.
Starbucks. We have Starbucks 30 miles away. Is that close?
No, mine's
Everything's
like 4
relative, right?
minutes. That's true. If you're like me and you've wanted to make a podcast ever since podcasts became a thing, then I encourage you to check out Anchor. Anchor is what I use to create podcasts. I always thought I didn't have the know-how or the resources to create a podcast. The research made it all feel too overwhelming, and then I discovered Anchor. It's free, easy. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. All right. Well, now that you have your invigorating beverage, let's dive right in. So, traditionally, we only allow unfamous people on the podcast. So, maybe you'll be our first famous person. What could be your claim to fame?
I'm probably not your first famous person, so don't worry about that. Um, I'm not famous. I'm just kind of doing my thing, and you had asked me to think about that, and I guess what I'm most proud of is that I've been a lifelong on a lifelong quest for self-discovery, and I guess that's what's motivated my life. So I'm not sure I'm famous for that, but it's what drives me and what I think defines me most.
I love that. I guess I'm getting a little off script here, but I'm wondering if that has anything to do with the way you were raised. Like, did your parents ever have like grand plans that you were going to be a astronaut or did they just want you to be happy and healthy and I'm thinking like some kids are set up for failure, right? Because they have, you're going to be special or you're going to do something great. And in a way, just by us being ourselves and living life and treating each other well, we're already humaning pretty nicely. However, some kids, they're raised with an expectation of, maybe some letters behind their name or like an MD, or were you just allowed to find your own way?
I was, but we were strongly encouraged to do our best. And my parents always wanted us to have a way to have a better life than they were able to have for themselves and to give to their kids. And a college education was always important to them. And I'm at an age that when I was growing up, women weren't necessarily encouraged to go to college. And if we did, our choices were being a nurse or a teacher, which are great fields to go into. And at the same time, it was kind of limited to those two professions. And um, so they always encouraged us to go to college. And out of 4 kids, all of us have some level of college. And I knew that I wanted to go to college and have my own career of some sort and be able to be independent and self-sufficient. So I was glad that my parents were willing to help me find a way to do that and encouraged me to do that. Yeah.
Well, where did you end up going and what did you study?
Well, I started out and I was in speech therapy and then went on to do audiology. And I started a business when I was about 28, and I had a private practice in audiology and worked with people with hearing impairment. And then eventually our field transitioned to a doctorate level. And so I ended up going back and getting a doctorate online.
Oh gosh. So
So
you do have those letters after your
I
name.
do have the letters.
I did not realize I was talking to Dr. Collins.
Well, that was a persona that I needed to finish my career, and I ended up selling my practice about 8 years ago. And so it was the field transitioned, and I had to transition with it and to stay up with it. And I did what I needed to do, but. About when I was around 53 or so, I was really feeling a calling to do something totally different, which was scary because I built a business and was supporting myself and doing fine. And then, that old sneaky inner voice starts saying, yeah, but let's do something different. You're really feeling drawn to something different. And so, so I did end up, some things just presented themselves that were really of interest to me and started kind of drawing me in a totally different direction. So 8 years ago, I did sell my business and have been trying to figure out who I'm going to be at this point in my life. So that's where I'm
Well,
at.
and were you raising children as well, or has that not been a part of the picture for you?
No, I did not have children of my own. I do have 2 stepchildren that were pretty much grown and out of the home by the time my husband and I married. And um, so, no, that's not been a part. So,
Okay, so a linguistic tag. Guests are asked to choose a word or phrase that they would like to hear used more often in everyday conversation. Something that doesn't get enough play, enough airtime, and our prior guest chose. You said you heard the prior recording,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
Was it Womple something? So bad.
Cottywomple.
Scotty Womple.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you were tasked to try to fit that somehow into our conversation today.
Okay. Okay. Well, I loved hearing that word. It was totally brand new to me, um, and I looked it up, and it was about travel in a purposeful manner towards a vague destination. And I think that is a perfect word for really for all of my life, but especially pertinent now, because I think that things are changing so much in our world that we are being called to travel to unknown, vague destinations to where, we really feel called to be moving in a direction, but we're not really sure what it looks like when we get there. And so I loved learning the new word. And I think it's very pertinent in my life right now.
And you also get to choose a word for our next guest to dance with. So it could be a peculiar word that you find funny or that just resonates with you. So what are you laying down for our next guest to pick up?
Well, once I heard that word, I thought, what would mine be? And it's not a new word for anyone, but the phrase that I'd like to put out there is inner wisdom. I think that we are all learning or needing to know how to access our inner wisdom. I think that maybe we don't even know what that means, or we can't acknowledge it because it sounds egotistical if we think we're wise. But I think there's a deep inner wisdom in everyone that once you know that and once you acknowledge it, that you can access it. And that's kind of my whole quest right now, is to be a facilitator of inner wisdom. So I'd like my phrase to be inner wisdom.
Okay, cool. Now the word that you're going to try and fit in somehow in this conversation, I'm not going to keep track of whether you do or do not use it because, as you heard in my last conversation, you might say it and I don't even hear it. So I'm not even going to try and hold you accountable for that. So don't worry too much about it. So let's talk about how you and I met. I ended up attending a virtual Zoom. It was a Zoom meeting about soul collage, and just the idea that your subconscious is kind of like just picking out images that speak to you, and then getting some type of message or direction. Maybe from that inner wisdom, you're talking about that you need at that moment, that but you're a layer of you is just not letting you grasp. But like by communicating through these pictures, you're telling yourself what you need to know. And I had just been really excited about that meeting for like 2 weeks ever since I signed up for it. And then you were there, you facilitated. So, it was a pretty moving, strong experience for me. Probably more than I bargained for. But one of my dedicated blog readers, he said that he was interested in this conversation with you today, hearing it, because you sounded like a very interesting person, and he wanted to know more about you as a person. And I'm like, you know what? That's exactly one of the reasons why I want to do this as well, is because, you and I had, a very brief encounter, and I only know you in those few moments. But even then, it was more about me, and, because you were just facilitating. And so now we get to kind of see who Emilie is.
Uh-oh.
Right?
Oh.
So I guess if you could paint a picture for us, how you, maybe once you decided to leave the audiology practice, that there was something else out there for you. What were some of the signposts along the way that pointed you to where you are? And kind of tell the listeners what you're doing in your own sandbox,
Okay. Okay. Um, well, it wasn't, and it still isn't like I have the whole picture painted in front of me. And I think it's kind of funny that you use that terminology, the picture painted in front of me, because, um, um, I guess it's been about 12 years ago. My husband and I went through, it was kind of a psychological training type thing. And at the end of it, we were encouraged to find what comes next. And so, I was ready to go off on an adventure to just find out what comes next. And like I said, um, my whole thing through life has been a quest for self-discovery. And one of my favorite places to go and learn is at Ghost Ranch, which is a retreat center in New Mexico. And so I was trying to look up workshops at Ghost Ranch, and I couldn't get on their website, but a workshop that was being presented there did show up. And I thought, I wonder what this is. And it was a painting workshop. And it was it was called process painting. And I thought, oh, that sounds neat. And I read the description, and it was all about self-discovery. It wasn't about painting a pretty picture or doing your masterpiece or anything like that. It was just what you learned about yourself while you were painting. And I thought, wow, that sounds really cool. And, not thinking to myself that I had never remembered picking up a paintbrush at that point in my life. So I signed up for this workshop and go to New Mexico to do process painting and learn more about myself. And when I get in there after the introductions, they said, okay, we're going into the studio. And I just froze. I was just paralyzed because I thought, oh my goodness, I have come here for a week and I don't know how to paint. And I sat paralyzed in front of an empty easel until the teacher had time to approach me. And she said, what would you like to do? And I said, I have no earthly idea. And so she led me through the process of allowing the paints to choose me, allowing the brushes to choose me. And so it was just a way of getting out of your own thinking mind and allowing the supplies that were there to be used to come together in a creative way. And it was just amazing. It was really stepping through that point of paralysis of not knowing what to do or what comes next, and trusting the process. And I eventually went out and studied with her in California and learned to facilitate process painting. And it's been like my own therapy on myself. And I'm not doing therapy. It is very similar to art therapy, but I'm not doing therapy on anyone. I just facilitate them allowing whatever they feel, whatever thoughts may be stuck, to come out and flow through the paint. And it's done very much like the SoulCollage. Then I turned my garage into an art studio and started teaching process painting and doing the process myself on a daily basis. But I found a lot of people wouldn't even come to paint because they were so wounded around being an artist and thinking they had any creativity within themselves. I couldn't even get them to the space to try it because it was so intimidating to be an artist and to paint. And then I learned about SoulCollage, and SoulCollage became a way that, everybody can cut and paste. Everybody can find images that they're attracted to. And so it became just a very invitational process for people who had been wounded creatively to step in and enjoy the process. So that's how I came into doing the SoulCollage. And then eventually I went out to do the facilitator training in SoulCollage in Santa Cruz, California. And I worked with a woman there that one of the images that I had would not speak to me. And a lot of times that's just a sign that it is such a stuck place within yourself that it doesn't want to come out and say anything. And she encouraged me to do holotropic breathwork, which I had read about before. But it was like all of these processes brought me to the next process. And so I eventually went out and did Stan Groff's holotropic breathwork in the Taos Ski Valley in New Mexico. And last summer became a facilitator in that process as well. So it's kind of like each process I've gotten into has expanded into the next process. And so it hasn't been that, like I said, the picture hasn't fully been painted. It's like I've been given crumbs along the way for the next thing that draws my attention and draws me further down the path then.
So the concept of being an artist, had you done art before? I know you said you had never picked up a paintbrush, but were you familiar with other types of art?
I personally, no. When I look back in college, I remember my favorite class out of any class I ever took in college was art appreciation. And when I would go to that class, the teacher, it was like being in an altered state of consciousness when you were there. It just, gosh, it was just fascinating. And it would take me a while when I would leave that class to kind of come back to campus and, be on the earth where I was. And so I really loved that. And I had traveled in Europe and seen a lot of art and enjoyed art and was always attracted to art, but felt like I was on the outside of it because I didn't feel talented in painting a pretty picture or creating. But after I got into the process painting, it was like it was just a door open that I could create anything I wanted to create. The biggest hang up was, would anybody else like it? And so I had to get past that block within myself. And I did turn my garage into an art studio, and everybody goes, "Oh, I want to see your art." And it took me years really to even have the courage to take them down there and see what I painted.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about what is going on inside me than a pretty picture that anyone wants to hang behind their sofa or anything. And it would be funny because my husband has some talent in art, and he would have a couple of canvases down there, and people would go down and they'd look at everything that was on the walls and they go, oh, and then they'd see Troy's and they go, oh, I like that. I mean, his made sense to them, and so it was almost like a wounding for me that they wouldn't say that about mine. And so it was moving past a point of it needing to be approved or appreciated by someone else. So, mine is, like I said, a process of self-discovery, and I actually love what comes out because it is just like a mirror within your soul, which, you just don't let just anyone wade through the image of your soul either. Some people are at a place that they could be with that, and some can't. So I still am careful, who I take down into my art studio, but I feel like that part of me has healed some where I don't need the affirmations of what the art, of what my art is about for anyone. So I love the process. and it's taught me so much.
Now the process painting, has that continued to be a daily practice, or have you as some new practices have come up, have some of the old ones kind of gone by the wayside? Like,
No, it hasn't gone by the wayside. I, I wait to be told every day what I'm going to do. Some days I feel like looking for images, and some days I feel like cutting them up, and some days I feel like putting them together on a card or in a collage. But some mornings I get up and my intuition tells me to paint, or there may just be some angst within my body that I know that if I can move with the paint and the color, that moves the anxiousness or whatever I'm feeling through my body. And so it is something that I continue to do. Um, I sometimes I start things and I don't finish them, and maybe a couple of weeks later, the inspiration hits me of where that wants to go, and so I'll jump back into the process, and it'll head out somewhere else. But I still do everything that I ever started out doing. I paint and collage and journal, and so no, I haven't lost any of it. It's just what's called for the day.
I don't know about you, but it seems like each of the practices that I've learned about that are truly helpful and everything, they do seem, they take time. And whenever you have one practice like journaling, and maybe you're doing dream work or something like that, and then maybe you add on top of that some type of physical process like yoga, and it seems like it calls for an investment, a huge time investment in yourself that um, I, I know at times I haven't been willing to make that commitment because I've been willing to put that into a job, for my employers,
Uh-huh.
and put that effort forth for my family, but not necessarily for myself. And so it's been kind of interesting, first of all, finding that time, and then giving myself permission to take advantage of it.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that, and it's been a learning process. Um, and I think one of the big deterrents to ever being in the processes for yourself is that you think you have to create a huge space of time. And I think sometimes it's just giving yourself what you can have. And if that's 10 minutes, then take 10 minutes. Um, um, and the other thing that I think helps is just having some space where you can do it, where you're not constantly picking up after yourself and getting it all out. Because if you only have 10 minutes to dedicate to yourself, you can spend your whole time getting it out and putting it up. Um, and I think that's one way that journaling is so conducive. If you don't have a lot of time, if you've got your journal, there's your space. It's there. Take your 10 minutes there. And so I think journaling is a really easy way to schedule time and create that. Um, um, People say you have to be disciplined, and I think I have a resistance to the word discipline because for one thing, I've been so disciplined. I got up at a certain time and went to work every day and worked hard and came home and got everything done. And so that felt like discipline to me. And when I think about my self-discovery processes, they're more like play. And I really try to use that language even. I'm going to play with what I'm discovering today rather than I'm going to work at creating a discipline of creativity. I even watch what I say about that because I don't want it to get into another thing I have to do or that I should do. I think we put so many shoulds on ourselves, and it's like an exercise program. If you feel like you should do that all the time, how much joy are you getting out of it? How much benefit are you getting out of it? And it is really good. I just try and wake up and allow my intuition. Okay, with the time I have today, which one would my soul and my body rather do? And if that's a part of accessing that inner wisdom, it will tell you what is most beneficial to you for the time being. And that's what I try and listen to. It is a commitment of time, but sometimes maybe not as much time as you might think that it would take.
I'm trying to remember if it was maybe Carrie Ann Moss. She was talking about my life is my medicine. And what I get from that is that sometimes life will bring you exactly what you need to kind of refine things, to point you in a more whole state of being. Because sometimes we feel so like fractured during childhood, or I don't know, even adulthood. Things can make you feel not whole. So like again, that message, my life is my medicine. Like this journey, things aren't happening to us. They're happening for us. Like
Right.
it's part of. So I'm wondering this point that you've gotten to or are getting to, where people's opinion and of your art doesn't matter as much. Were you ever at a point in your life where people's opinion did matter
Oh,
a whole lot?
definitely. Oh,
Appearances were
definitely.
everything.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I'm not saying that I'm totally over it yet either. I think that my art is an area that I can learn to give up that need more than others. And I still walk in and care what people think about me, and sometimes just feel devastated by what I think they must think. But that's why it's so nice to have a process to play with, because when I get to feeling that way with my painting, you just go, it is just a painting, Emilie. And so you kind of learn to let it go. And so that's what my art is teaching me, is how to let some of those more important things that you think are more important go, as far as what people think about you. There are actually times I'll be out in the real world and I'll have that pain of, what are people going to think about me? And a painting will actually come in my mind to go, remember when you painted me and you felt that way, and how did you move through that? And so it is like the painting is a constant teaching to me. Those paintings actually come up in my head just to kind of re-instruct me again. Yeah. Same thing with my SoulCollage cards. I'll be in a situation and a card will come to my mind, and it's like that card was made not intentionally for that situation, but when that situation came up and that image came up in my head, it re-instructs me on how to move through that situation. So that's what I'm loving about it. I'm maybe not any further along than anybody else as far as caring what other people think and trying to measure up and look good and all of that. And I would love for people to love my art too. And they may love it more than I think. I may not even be allowing their appreciation in fully. I don't know, but it has just become a teacher to me. So it's just become a way of me teaching me accessing my own wisdom. I read a lot, and and I listen to what other people say, and that is so important to me to know how other people are processing things, and I take that in, but it doesn't become my end all. I compare what I read and what I learn from everything else that I'm exposed to in life to what really comes through my painting and through my collage, to find my own wisdom, and how I put that wisdom together.
I'm curious, do you have a specific example of when you listened to inner wisdom? Is anything like coming to mind that like a specific instance?
I was just in a conversation last week, and um, um, some things were brought up, on some things that I could work on, about myself. And I was told to go journal about it. And I thought, okay, I
Wait, is
can
this a
journal.
spouse? Did a
I'm
spouse point
saying
out
this
to you
very carefully. I'm saying this
your
very
shortcomings and tell you to write
carefully.
about it?
I'm saying this very carefully. I'm being
Okay.
non-committal here. I'm just saying there were some things I could work on. Okay, and
Uh-huh.
look within, to
Mm-hmm.
explore how I might be thinking about something,
I see.
and um, and so I had like an hour to drive and think about it, and a painting that I did actually 11 years ago came to my mind, and um, um, and a lot of my paintings are just done on large paper, and I roll them up. I've got a whole vat of rolled up papers, and so I came home and I dug through my vat, and I found that painting that I did 11 years ago, and I just started looking at what was coming through the painting, um, and it was about shouldering too much responsibility. And some of it was my responsibility, and some of it was not my responsibility. And it was showing some very painful things that I was feeling in my body, because of how I was responding to life and shouldering, more than my own responsibility. Um, and it had an image um, of a lion that was getting inside a rocket ship and taking off. And I am a very strong Leo, and what that said to me was that my sense of power was ready to exit because it was taking on so much responsibility from that was not mine, that it was ready to just check out and get out of here. And so, I would say that was another way that my inner wisdom was showing up to say, explore what you were even dealing with 11 years ago, because it's kind of coming back to the same thing. And maybe you might find ways to look at that differently now. And so, um, I felt like that was my intuition, my inner wisdom coming back and saying, look back at this and see how you might see that differently now.
Mm.
Um, and I ended up journaling from that, because sometimes when I journal, I feel like I'm just writing in circles. It's kind of like I'm following that squirrel that's running around in circles in my head, and I just keep saying the same thing over and over and over again, and thinking the same thing over and over again. And so the painting took me totally somewhere else, for me to look at it differently. Um, so I would say that was my inner wisdom showing up again. It's paying attention to those intuitions that just naturally come. And I think we're just bombarded with those intuitions and those messages. I think that we can get, so busy and so distracted, um, that we we miss those. And I think the more that we can find a stillness and a quietness, that we recognize those showing up more often.
So do you see yourself, do you sense another transition where you're wanting to do something else? Do you feel like that restlessness of wanting to experience something else, or do you just see yourself possibly being in this art space and just introducing more people, like myself, the soul collage? Do you feel like that's what you're called to do right now, or?
I think everything that I've trained in the last 12 years has created kind of a package of what I want to put out into the world, and that includes the painting and the soul collage and the holotropic breathwork. The breathwork, I was just certified in that, and now we can't do breathwork because we can't be in that close a proximity with each other right now. But I feel like, yes, that it's something to do with how I combine those three processes. And still, like I said, the painting is not complete. I'm stepping into that cottywomple again. I'm being drawn to a destination that's not completely painted and clear for me. So I'm not sure how it manifests, but I am feeling that it is time for me to manifest that in bigger ways. And bigger ways doesn't always mean bigger audiences. It may be in the expansiveness of how I work one-on-one with people. I don't know what it looks like yet, April, but I know that what my new training has come to has expanded me, and if it can be beneficial to other people in the ways that they can expand their lives, then I would love to be a part of that.
Well, I know some of the more, I think we only had 10 people or maybe
Mm-hmm.
11 at one point during our Zoom meeting of the Soul Collage. And it was probably one of the most memorable art classes I've ever had. And I know it was small, and maybe, if people were looking at just numbers, it may not have been a success, right? But it made such an impact. Like those people who were there and were brave enough to like share their soul, like one of them felt trapped. She loved nature, but she felt trapped inside. And so every time
Mm-hmm.
I go out and water my flowers, I think of her, and
Oh,
my
wow.
my soul goes out to her, just
Mm-hmm.
wishing her happiness and light, and that she can get outside. Like we don't, we didn't get a whole lot of background onto a lot of the participants, but parts of them were manifesting through these pictures that they were just showing and discussing.
Right.
And so anytime I think about a cactus, I'm thinking about the one woman who feels like she's her authentic self, but yet she's still maintaining boundaries as symbolized by the prickles on the cacti.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it may
Mm-hmm.
have just been one afternoon, and maybe not a huge success, like I said, on account of numbers, but it was definitely impactful, maybe more so than it would have been if there had been, a room full of people.
Right.
So,
Right. Well, and I think we're redefining success and what success looks like now. I think we have to. Um, I I felt like the afternoon was a total success because 10 really brave souls showed up to do their own work. And I think sometimes it's planting seeds, and you don't get to see the whole tree grow at some point, but you do plant the seeds. And I think, when you're doing soul work, which we were doing, it's not about the number of people who show up. It's how deeply they're willing to look within themselves. And so I saw it as a total success. I thought that it took a lot of bravery, and it was those people trusting their curiosity. I think only 2 people that I knew before that were on the group had done SoulCollage. And so something drew them there, and they were willing to step into something that they didn't know anything about and see what it was about. And I think that's how we progress through life, is when we're willing to be curious about something that sparks our interest and draws us in, and then the willingness to step in and do that, I think is a huge success. So I don't measure the success of a class by the number of people who show up. In fact, I don't feel like I could have been as present for more people if more had shown up. And so that's one thing that I'm playing with. Everyone's wanting me to do online SoulCollage, and I think in trying to picture how I do that, a lot of people are starting to do that, and I think that I would probably limit my classes to 8 to 10 people, because in creating a space and being present to the depth of people's soul, I don't think I can be present to more than that many people at one time. If I had a huge group and we were in person, and there were a few people that maybe do the same thing I do, then I could see getting that bigger and bigger. But I'd rather go deep than go big. So I was completely thrilled with it, and really felt like the universe gave me what I could handle. I feel like if we had been a bigger group, that there wouldn't have been as much permission and safety to go as deep as everyone went. So
Right, I think so too.
I saw it as a huge success.
Because like we didn't go deep until after we had already cut out our pictures and positioned them on the paper, and I was thinking, wow, we're this is an art project, we're done, like this is getting close
Uh-huh.
to the end. But no, like the real magic happened once we started talking about it. And
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
and if you're I think, and subconsciously, well, like you have in the back of your mind, okay, we have so many people in the group. If everyone gets us just to say something, then we're going to be here for a really long time. So maybe I
Uh-huh.
just need to go quicker or skip over, just be on the surface. But this really allowed us to go deep, like you said.
It did. Yeah, but even though it just seemed like an art project, it was a form of meditation that was going on, where people got still and noticed the images that they were drawn to. Everyone was becoming still within themselves and noticing what was coming into them. So they were giving themselves that space for that to happen. And then it was our intention to allow that to come up. And I think when you said that intention, that allows for that wisdom to show up and speak for you. Um, um, because it can be just turned into a creative, making a pretty card or a pretty picture or whatever. But I think all art really can be a source of opening that door to the inner wisdom. And um, it just seems to to always show up in the process of soul collage. Soul collage was developed by a Jungian analyst named Sina Frost. And so the whole purpose of doing the cards was to access that deep inner wisdom, and to be able to learn about the symbolism behind it and all that it has to say. And so it's a very easy process, but a very profound process that kind of came naturally through her own inner wisdom, but is shared all over the world now. I think there are over 3,000 facilitators in Soul Collage now.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Well, the way I even heard about this class is that I had initially heard about the holotropic breathwork, and I
Mm-hmm.
had signed up for the newsletter or to get notified of events. And I actually haven't done the breathwork yet,
Mm-hmm.
but I know some of the people who were part of the Zoom meeting, the Soul Collage, they had. So for our
Mm-hmm.
listeners, can you tell them what breathwork is all about? Because I'm sure some people are like, breathing, we do that.
Right.
What's so
Right.
special about breath, and why is it called work, and what are you accomplishing? So.
Okay. Okay. Well, holotropic, holo means moving. Let's see. Holo means wholeness, and tropic means moving toward. Maybe I should make that my word this time. Um, so it's moving toward wholeness. And it is a process of deep breathing along with um, uh, music, very specific music that um, um, that takes you into expanded states of consciousness. So it's a process of driven music along with the breathing. It is usually a 3-hour process. You lay on a mat and you're taught how to relax and to allow the breath to carry you on your altered state experience, your journey. And um, the process can take you into very different experiences. Some people experience their birth, the processes of their birth, from their conception through the womb, through being born. Some people re-experience biographical information that they have lived through within their lifetime. Some people can experience ancestral experiences or times in other lifetimes, and people can experience transpersonal realms, which are considered past, beyond the personal. Some people call it source or God, or expanding into higher consciousness. But again, the breath and the music is the medium that carries them into expanded states of knowing themselves, of their own consciousness. So it's a very intense process um, um, that can be used as a doorway into those expanded states, just like art and journaling can be maybe not as intense, but can again open those doors to that wisdom. Um, the holotropic breathwork was created by Stanislav Grof, um, and as a means of expanding our consciousness. And I think is a very pertinent process now when we are trying to understand our own wounds, our ancestral lineage wounds, and trying to find new answers for what comes in life now at such a chaotic time of change in our world. I think it is a way of thinking outside of the box of your conscious everyday reality, to find what heals yourself, but also what heals the world. Yeah.
How often do people do the holotropic breath work? Like, is it more than just a once, and that's enough to kind of open you up to areas that you that you need to address, or is it something more of a yearly, like once a year type
Well,
thing?
I think everybody decides that for themselves. Some people do one time and they go, oh, wow, that was really mind expanding and really wonderful. And I think I'm done. And then there are people like me that do it and would like to do it more often, but can't find the access to it. And so we are trying to train more facilitators in being able to offer the process so that people can do it on a more regular basis. There are groups in Houston and Austin that do it at least every 2 months, sometimes every month. In becoming a facilitator, I think I ended up having like over 30 hours of breath work, because they want you to learn experientially before you try and help facilitate and be with people on their journeys. And really, it's just opened up a whole new world for me that I just want to keep learning from it. So I would want to do it 2 or 3 times a year at least. I'd love to be doing it right now, but we've had to cut off the actual breath work because of the virus. And so that's one of the reasons that the Houston group was promoting some things like the SoulCollage and they're about to do the mandala making, all art processes to help you go into those same altered states of consciousness.
I was just going to ask, do you have any these journeys, the idea of these, this expansion, I find it just fascinating. Do you have any personal experiences or holotropic breathwork journeys that you would be willing to tell us about? Did you experience your birth, or
I
any
did.
ancestral?
I did, and it's different for everyone when they're experiencing the breath work. And so, I will share one of mine, and at the same time, um, if you've not done it, don't feel like there's any prescribed thing that shows up. It is different for everybody. And I know when I went the first time, I was really afraid that I would go through this breath work, and they train you how to breathe and what you're going to experience, and how they've set
Were
everything
you
up for you.
afraid that nothing was going to happen?
Right. I was going,
Yes.
oh, what if I'm the first person that goes through this and
You're
nothing
dead.
happens?
Hmm.
And well, and so and some people think that nothing does happen. I mean, sometimes you can sleep through the whole 3 hours. Um, but we believe that something is happening because they play the music very loud, and there's no way that you could just sleep through the very loud music. And so sometimes you may be aware of what you went through, and sometimes you might not. You may think that you slept through the whole thing, but then as the days go on, you start to integrate some of what you didn't even know was happening, and you start to see changes happening in your life or in your thinking or in your way of relating. So you don't always know that something happened. and going in as a beginner, I thought, oh, please let me know what happened. And so I actually was amazed that something happened immediately, and I did immediately go into the womb of when I was in the womb, and I um, I sense that some things were not totally perfect for me to come to this world, and so as the consciousness of my fetal self, I was sensing that I was sensing some of the energy of the world and of the family, and and things like that in womb, and I decided that I wasn't going to come. I told God I probably had agreed to some mission here or some contract, but I wasn't going to come. And so for the first 2 hours of my breath work, I was in the womb refusing to come. And um, um, I um, I did eventually come because I knew that by not coming, I was causing my mom distress. And so um, I eventually was birthed, uh, mainly to get my mom out of distress. And then Mom and I um, did talk about my birth later. She doesn't know how I know that, but we did have conversations about my birth, and I was the fourth child in 3 years in my family, and so there are twins that are 14 months older than me, and my oldest brother is 3 years older than me, and so it was a very busy time for my parents, to bring on another child, and I think I sensed that in the womb, and we've had a lot of conversations since about what Mom was feeling at the time, what different people in the family were feeling, um, which makes it pretty right on that what my fetal self, my fetal being was sensing at the time. Um, um, so, yeah.
Is your mom aware of what you do to help people and what the holotropic breath work is all about, or?
She understands that I work with healing processes, and um, she's actually had me do SoulCollage for her church group, and that was that was a really fun time. There were 35 people in that group, um, and they did the process. It was incredible. It was at a church that I grew up in, and Mom still attends there. And she asked me to come do that because she knows that I do these processes with people and that they're healing. And she knows some of the breath work. She will be 93 years old this Sunday, and there's just um, she knows that I facilitate this. She's not really certain what it all involves, but she knows that it's about healing and wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh, wow. Well, how
yeah.
can people find out more about you and follow what you're making in your own sandbox?
Um, I do have a Facebook page. In fact, I have two Facebook pages called Self Discovery Through Art. And that's where I usually post most of my information. If I don't mind giving should I give my email address? If people were interested in breath work or questions about
Sure, you
that.
can do that, and then I'll also include it in the show notes for the episode.
Okay,
So,
okay. Well, my email is Collins, Emilie, it's CollInsEmilie at yahoo.com. Because most of my both of the Facebook pages are mainly working with the art processes, and not everyone is going to be interested in the breath work. And so as people start to, seek me out for that, then I would want to create a Facebook page that's more dedicated to that type information.
One of the questions I had meant to ask earlier is what got you interested in audiology? Often people will get into some type of healing field where they knew of someone who was afflicted or had a handicap in whatever area they go into, so that they have that calling to help people. What made you choose that field?
I think it's like everything I've done. I go toward what I'm drawn to, and then it opens into even more. And I was drawn into speech pathology mainly just because I wanted to help people be able to speak and voice themselves. And as I worked through speech pathology, I worked with a lot of hearing impaired children, especially, and really, really loved working with that. And so
That's
it
what I
just
got the feeling that when we talked about, you didn't have children of your own. I was like, I kind of guessed that your practice probably included a lot of children.
It did. The practice really started to become more about adults, um, but I worked with both, and I loved both. And I'm just remembering one of the things that influenced me when I was in high school. We had a family friend that was a speech pathologist, and she asked me if I would read with a student of hers who was progressively losing her hearing. And I think I started working with her when she was about 7 years old and worked with her for 3 years. Um, and we would just read together on Saturday mornings. And it was just a way of getting more vocabulary into her than she would ordinarily get, because we were trying to help her build that vocabulary so much before she would totally lose her hearing. And so, I'm just now remembering that. That's crazy. That's really what pointed me in that direction. And I loved just being with her on a one-on-one basis and feeling like I was feeding her intellect and her brain with information that would be important to her later on.
Like a little race against time, I guess, huh?
Really, it was. Mm-hmm.
And now you continue to help people find voice. I think that's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Just in a different way, and
Yeah,
I
thank
think
you.
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, our final segment is Luke's story in his podcast, the Lifestylist podcast. He asks his guests this question: who have been 3 teachers or teachings in your life that you might share with our audience that they could go research and also learn from?
Okay. When I listened to your last podcast, I'm kind of like the author, Miss Williams. The first person who comes to my mind is a personal friend named Mamie Porter, who has passed now. And the reason that I bring her up, not that she is someone that someone can go and find now, but the importance of mentoring. I didn't know until she passed away that she was 30 years my senior. And when I first came to the town where I built my practice, she was one of the first people I met here. And she and I developed a friendship, and we met for 28 years once a week. We were kind of like Tuesdays with Maury, the book where he meets with his old professor, but she and I met for 28 years once a week, and we read books together. We studied philosophy. We talked about life experiences. We both were educators of children, and we talked about innovative ways of education. And I think that she is the biggest mentor in my life. And the reason that I bring her up is just because I think it's so important that we realize we don't have to be published or famous to mentor those who have something to learn from us. So that would be my number one.
And if I could just interrupt, that reminds me, Dr. Miles Neal. Uh, I've heard him interviewed several times, and he has talked off and on about the importance of mentorship.
Right.
He has often learned from teachers, and that was, decades long. Like
Mm-hmm.
so many people, they want to, go attend a workshop or read an article and feel like, oh, I know everything,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm all of a sudden an expert, and I
Mm-hmm.
can tell other people what to do. And so, I mean, and it is, you do need to be able to share what you know, and that doesn't mean you have to be uh, perfect in your knowledge,
Right.
but it also doesn't take away from the fact how important finding someone who's been in the game longer than you have,
Mm-hmm.
um, and being willing to learn from them.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And people at my age, which I'm in my 60s now, just acknowledging that you might have something that would help someone along the way is important. Sometimes, I think we discount what maybe we have to share. Um, so there's an acceptance that comes along with aging, of becoming the elder, or not the elder in that you know more, but you have had some more experience that might be beneficial for someone else. So I just think that's huge. Um,
Mm-hmm.
um, I I love Sina Frost, who was the founder of SoulCollage, and she has a book called SoulCollage Evolving, and I think that's a great resource, um, um, as well as soulcollage.com online is a way that you can get more information about that. Um, I would encourage people to read anything by Stanislav Grof, on consciousness and growing in that way. One of his co-teachers also was Tav Sparks, and Tav wrote a book called The Power Within, which I think is a really good layman's terms for understanding what happens in the breath work, and promoting the idea of us each having an inner healer within ourselves, and learning from that. Um, I, um, I I love reading Carl Jung's books, of dreams and symbolism and ancient wisdom. Um, those type things feed what I do now. Um, Mamie and I used to go to Jean Houston seminars, which Jean Houston is, um, she was about mythology and symbolism, and learning through theatrical um, experiences, really just learning to experience our inner life through motion, through art, through mythology and stories. So um, I think those are the main ones that come to mind.
Well, we started with yard work in the background here at my house in
And are
Houston,
you hearing?
and
I'm trying to get away
yes.
from it here. That was my that was my phone call a while ago. So
We're just coming full circle.
I know. Well, I'm going to the closet so we can get away from the
No,
lawnmowers.
that's fine. Well, I think we're done unless you had anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up.
No, I can't think of anything.
Well, Dr. Collins, I I really appreciate your time. I know we went over what I told you it would take, but I've
That's
thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Well, I have too, and I love talking to you, April, and I love your curiosity and your progressiveness of stepping out there and putting what interests you out to other people. I really admire that.
All right, Emily, thank you so much.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.